Gary Striegler, and in a previous video I showed myself clamping up this curved jamb. There were some things I didn't get a chance to show or cover as well as I would have liked to because I had to hurry because the glue was setting up and drying. But I want to backtrack a little bit and just show some things about how I made the form and also a couple of the tools I used to do that. So first of all, this is the jamb. One of the things I didn't remember to share in my previous videos, I did mark the very center of my laminating pieces for this particular jamb. I was using 8-foot pieces, so I put marks at 4 foot. And that can be important because if you happen to get too far to one side, you can end up not having enough extra on the sides. This point right here and one over there is that place that I talked about where my curved elliptical trim hits a spot where it's perfectly parallel to the floor, and that's the cut line where I want to cut the trim. But this radius extends quite a bit past that, and the reason for that is I'm going to be making a paint grade trim where I'll actually use this jamb to create that curved blank, and that's going to be on another video I'm going to share. It's probably going to be a week or so till I can get around to sharing that. But one of the things that I did after I set this form, or after I glued it up, I marked those points that showed that line, the line where it's, the trim is perfectly parallel to the floor. Then I measured across there, and this spreader is actually holding the jamb at that correct width. Now it's sprung just a tiny, tiny bit when I unclamped it, so I just put a pipe clamp around the outside, pulled it back in, and then used some pocket screws on this spreader piece to keep it at the width I want. Now, I'm going to take a little handheld planer. This is relatively flat, but I'm going to take a handheld planer and get to a flat surface. I'll probably scrape the glue off first. Then, with someone to help me, we're actually going to feed this through a table saw to get it to about 1/8 of an inch wider than our finished width. Then, believe it or not, I can actually turn on edge and feed it through a planer to get 2 clean edges. That's going to get me my final width. The other thing I'll do is I'm going to sand around inside here. We planed those boards pretty smooth, but they still need sanding. You wouldn't think so, but you can use a random orbit sander. You know, the base on that random orbit sander's got a little bit of give. And as long as you keep it moving, you can sand the inside of this jamb really, really nicely. So, couple things. I did talk a little bit about the clamps that I use to clamp this together. These are Bessie. They're a large, heavy-duty C-clamp. Don't try and do this with a clampless. It's a very heavy-duty clamp. You know, there's other ways to make curved jambs, but this is a way that's worked for me, so I'm sharing what works for me. These are an investment, but once you buy them, they're going to last you for your whole career, and you probably pass them on to somebody else. And one of the things I did want to show, this is actually a clamp that I use that they don't make anymore, but you might be able to find some. And it's the same type of heavy-duty clamp, except on this end, it has a nut that you can use an impact driver to set this up. And that's a lot quicker, and it can also be a lot more powerful than twisting all the time with your wrist. But I don't like to demonstrate with tools that you can't buy anymore. So you might, if you happen to see some of those, find some, invest in them. I don't think anybody else makes those, but I did want to share that's what I'm able to do because I bought those about 20 years ago. This is that glue roller that I talked about, and you don't have to have this, but you fill this hopper with glue and it makes it really fast spreading the glue on these laminating layers. It has a little hopper that you put in and fill with water when you get done. Here's a hint though, don't be like me and then forget to go back and clean it up. It's always a good idea unless you're going to be doing another glue up really soon. When you get through spreading the glue, put it in the hopper, do your glue up, and then go back and clean it up, or else you'll end up with one that's all glued together and it's a lot of problems. I don't know if you can see it or not, but right here there's a little bit of plastic wrap. I buy mine from CSH Custom Service Hardware. It just comes in rolls. And what that plastic wrap does is it just keeps those layers together to where they don't try and twist too much on me, but it's not so tight that they can't give a little bit. So I always use that plastic wrap when I put it together. This is that flat metal that I talked about. This piece is about 6 inches wide. You can buy this probably from anybody that's got a welding shop, or if you're a builder like I am, the same place that you buy your brick lintels will have that. It's 1/8 inch metal, and it'll bend around there and give you a continuous surface. These are those metal L brackets that I glued in place. And these are just angle iron. This is, I think, is about a 5x5 angle iron. This is probably 5/16, 1/4 inch would probably work. And I've drilled holes in it so that I can just screw it down right to the layout I have for the jamb. Now, there's one more thing that I want to share and show, and this works really strictly for if you're doing what I call historic ellipses. And again, I'm going to be sharing another video on how to lay out an historic ellipse. I hope to be able to shoot that tomorrow. But if you go to historic homes, especially in the South and a lot of places, the ellipses that you see are not those geometric ellipses that have a really tight radius. They are one tight radius that gently blends into a much greater radius. And I figured out the way to make my elliptical trim to run through a Woodmaster by using 2 true radiuses. So that's still what I do today. And what I have found for me, almost all of those radiuses that I do work just fine with a 12-inch radius. And so this is a 12-inch radius. I had someone take a piece of pretty heavy flat steel and cut it on that radius. Then they took actually some of these little L brackets and cut them down and welded them there. And then they welded this flat band around it. So when I'm making that spot where that tight 12-inch radius blends into my much greater radius on the top, I just glue this down and it gives me something great to clamp to. You don't have to do this. You can just keep putting these brackets on around that corner closer and closer together. But if you're going to do a lot of them, and you know somebody that's got a welding shop, or if you're handy with a welder yourself, these really make a difference when you're putting this together. Saves a lot of time screwing brackets down. Plus, this metal is strong enough, I can actually clamp to this, not just where those brackets are if I need to. Now, I did share this before, but I'm going to say it again. During this clamping process, my laminating layers fit in between here, and I'm clamping right basically in the middle of the bracket, but I put another piece on the back side, and that helps spread that clamping pressure. If you look at this jamb, it's got glue squeeze out, but it's really a nice true radius. So that's just a little further explanation on the method that I use to create a curved jamb. Now, if this was a circle top or an eyebrow, it would be even easier to do, but I'd still be doing the same technique of, drawing a line. It's the radius that I wanted, and then I would put the brackets an 1/8 inch back from that finished radius for the thickness of my metal, screw those down probably about every 6 inches, and then just clamp my laminating layers in between. Again, I find that 5 layers that come out to about 13/16 works pretty well for me. I don't think you'd ever want to go under 5. You might want to plane it down a little bit thinner and get to 6. Now, one of the things you probably need to know if you're trying to get that thin of laminating layers, one, don't take more than about a 30-second off as you're running through your planer. And you may have to slide a piece of MDF into the bed of your planer as kind of a sacrificial base, and that'll allow you, at that point you can plane down to nothing. But a lot of planers won't go down that below 1/4 inch unless you slide a bedboard in there out of a piece of MDF. You do have to put a little cleat under that piece of MDF so that the planer wheels don't pull it through. Anyway, that's a whole lot of information, maybe more than you need to know, but that's a lot of things that I've learned. It took me years to learn, so I wanted to share them with you now. And please do check out the other videos that I've got coming up on laying out an historical ellipse. And I'm also going to be teaching how to take a jamb like this using some router bits and to create a curved length that will perfectly follow this radius.